celebrating the King of Pop on a new series where I'll be reviewing every single solo Michael Jackson record, starting with his debut record on Epic Records, produced by Quincy Jones, Off the Wall. I'm really excited to be doing this series because Michael Jackson is an artist that I truly grew up with. I fell in love with songs like Billie Jean and Beat It, but really got to know Michael's music through the Bad record, and specifically the Moonwalker movie. That movie introduced me to a bunch of the stuff that he did with the Jackson 5, like ABC, I'll Be There, a whole bunch of other songs. And then it was my introduction to like some of the lesser known songs like Leave Me Alone and that sort of stuff. Moonwalker is a movie that I watched endlessly. I wore out the tape that I had and truly became a huge fan of Michael the artist, but more specifically, Michael the songwriter and performer. And through experiencing his music, I sort of started at Bad and moved forward. And so I worked my way backwards to Thriller eventually because Thriller was such a monster record, but I never really gave Off the Wall a listen, if you will. I had heard the singles, but I'd never really given it a shot to listen to it in full, even though I'm a self-proclaimed fan of Michael. So I took the opportunity to do this series and went back and listened to Off the Wall in full for the first time in my life, and I'm in my mid-40s. So it was a really interesting experience listening to Off the Wall from beginning to end with no interruptions on a drive to work and really taking it in and then listening to it again for a second and third time today to really get my thoughts. And I know technically it's not Michael's debut. He put out albums before, but it's his debut on Epic, which was really the start of this monster run that he had that turned him from a regular artist to a true superstar. So in this episode of the podcast, of the Arc Overload podcast, I'm really stoked to talk about Off the Wall in full, and I'm excited to have you along with me on this journey. If you want to follow along as I continue to review every Michael Jackson record moving forward from here, Thriller will be next. I'm excited to have you join me on that journey. So if you like, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and or wherever you listen to a podcast, wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. So I'm excited, and let's get started. Off the Wall is a record that starts with arguably one of his biggest songs, and that's Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. Don't Stop Till You Get Enough has such an iconic open with just the shaker and the bass line and Michael talking in the background. And I feel like this was kind of like really the start of him like showing his emotions and like wearing them kind of on his sleeve, if you will. Like I know he was kind of doing it before with Ben and sort of that stuff, but really like getting into that, like again, superstar level, right? Of just like just being out there and being unapologetic about it. And so when you hear that signature Michael Jackson wail, that ooh sound, I'm not going to mimic it, but you know what I'm talking about. And the drums kick in, and we have the strings as the main melody playing, and then you have the cellos or violas, it might be violas or cellos, that respond, back to violence. It's so iconic, that melody, and it's so happy. And as a album starter, as an intro song to an album, I think Michael heard, like, I mean, he's one of the songwriters of the song, but like he heard that song and he heard what it was becoming. He's like, yeah, we're starting the record with this track. And it's just one of those things where it's truly iconic, especially when the beat kicks in. Now the thing about Don't Stop Till You Get Enough that I think is really interesting is that he's singing in this like falsetto the entire time. You know, granted, he'll do the call and response like da, da, and then he goes ba, da, da, da. That's his actual singing voice, but he's doing this really high pitched, singing in his falsetto, throughout the track, and then even in the chorus, staying in that falsetto the entire time. The one thing about Don't Stop Till You Get Enough that I think is far be it from me to criticize Michael as a songwriter or the other songwriters on this track, but I would have loved to hear, and it only happens twice in the song, that string melody, because I think it's so iconic, right? With this kind of disco vibe that they've got going on for this track, but it only happens twice in the song, right? I would have loved to have heard it like one more time. I understand like why it's only in there twice, because you really only need it those two times. What I do love is that the bridge of the song, which is that kind of trumpet synth solo, ba da ba ba da ba ba da ba 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 ba, only happens once in the song, and it is truly an iconic moment because it's really like a palate cleanser. Because throughout the song, we've had kind of the same chord progression, the same bass line within the verse and the chorus. The bridge comes in, and you've got some chord changes. Ba-da-bum, 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 bum, bum, bum. You've got that, but you've also just got like a break from the falsetto, and the falsetto is really cool. But it's nice to kind of get a break from it. And then, in typical form back in the late 1970s, this song has like a 2-minute outro, primarily because they're giving space to the DJs to mix to the next song. Don't Stop Till You Get Enough to me is an exceptional opener to this record, which takes us to Rock With You. And Rock With You has such an iconic beginning as well. The drum fill at the beginning, super iconic, very, very simple structure. And you've got that synth solo with just like bass, drums, and some chords, some pads. Really, really bare, but great, right? What I've noticed about this record, and what I noticed about Rock With You specifically, is like how much having live instrumentation takes things to the next level, right? This is before, we were doing like drum synths and that sort of stuff. I mean, it was kind of prevalent in the music back in the day, back in the late 70s, early 80s, but it wasn't popularized yet. So the live drumming Off the Wall to me is spectacular because it just adds that much identity to the songs, right? You're not getting something that's like on the note, quantized consistently, right? It's not, there's this flow to these songs. And even though the beats are repetitive and theoretically simple, what's not simple is staying in time throughout the song and throughout the recording and maintaining that groove. Rock With You does an excellent job of keeping that disco funk feel. I love the vocal harmonies of the track, and especially the key change towards the end. I really think take the song to another level. Plus, you've got that really cool kind of bridge, ba-da-dum, dum, ba-dum, ba-dum, bum, bum. Whatever sound that is, I think is really unique to the song. It just adds a whole bunch of flavor to it. And Rock With You is iconic Michael Jackson song. It's really cool, right? It's not one of the songs that like, I know people truly love this song. For me, it's not upper echelon Michael Jackson material. It's great, and it fits the vibe of this record very, very well. We get to Working Day and Night. I love this song. I love the frenetic pace of this song. I love how fast this song is, and I like that it this is one of many instances in Jackson's catalog where he talks about like having like a 9 to 5, right? Like the way you make me feel, right? I'll be working from 9 to 5 to buy you things to keep you on my side. And this song is like, you got me working day and night. It's just like this. He romanticized that idea of someone who clocks in and out of a job, because that's not something he did. He was working from the minute he woke up to the minute he slept, if he slept, right? And so he's someone that like, I think romanticized the idea of like, hey, like have a job and so I can, support this love interest of mine, and maybe they want a little too much, so I gotta spend a little more, so I gotta work a little harder so I can make more money, blah, blah, blah. But I love, 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 love the vibe of this track. I love how just frenetic it is. And this was when I said earlier in the episode that like I hadn't heard Off the Wall. This, or as a record, I hadn't heard Off the Wall. I had heard some songs here and there, but this was one of the songs that I got to experience for the first time, and was one that I truly, truly thought was just like, okay, like I'm getting the vibe of what this record is. And I've heard people describe Off the Wall as a disco record, right? It was like Michael Jackson's like kind of like disco record, because that's what was really big at the time. I don't necessarily get that with the first two tracks. I mean, yes, but I've heard them so much outside of the context of the record that to me they're just single tracks. This was the first like album track, Working Day and Night, where I'm like, oh, I get it. I get where like this like disco vibe is prevalent to like the entire record. Same with Get on the Floor. Get on the Floor has that same vibe for me, where like you've got that slap bass throughout the track. You've got those live drums again that I mentioned. And this is where like it's Jackson's like almost natural voice, that lower tenor, or that lower alto voice, I should say, not tenor, but that like lower alto voice that obviously like he could take the soprano if he wanted to, but like his bass was like that lower alto voice, right? And then about halfway through the song, he brings it back to that higher register that he was so well known for. But Get on the Floor is a fun song. But that and Get on the Floor was also a song that I heard for the first time listening to this record. But that's not the case with Off the Wall, the song itself. I've heard Off the Wall before many, many times. And even after listening to this record in full, this to me is still the standout track of the record. And to me has what I think is the best chorus of the album in general. That, so tonight, gonna leave that 9 to 5 up on the shelf and just enjoy yourself. I mean, that is so well written, right? From a vocal melody and also just having the harmonies that go with it when he sings it all together. The madness and the music get to you. Da, 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 da. Really, really cool. And I like the verse. I like the boom, da, doom, 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 doom. I love that bass line, claps and stuff in the background. Off the Wall, Michael was well known for naming his albums after tracks on the record. Sometimes they weren't the best tracks, Dangerous being an example there. But in this case, Off the Wall to me is the standout of this record. I think it's, I mean, not to say that the other songs don't stand out, they do, but like this to me, front to back, is the best written song on the record. Continuing on to side 2 of the record is a song called Girlfriend, written by Paul McCartney. This song's okay. I don't love this song per se. I think it's one of those tracks where when I heard it, and nothing in it made me want to rewind and listen to it again. It's one of those, you know, it's just kind of a chill song. Nothing necessarily to write home about, at least in my opinion. The fact that it's written by Paul McCartney is really interesting because they did work together again a few years later on The Girl Is Mine. But in general, like the song is fine. Nothing, like I said, that stands out to me per se. But then that takes us to She's Out of My Life. And She's Out of My Life, I had heard before. I've seen the Cirque du Soleil Michael Jackson show in Las Vegas, which if you haven't seen it, if you're a fan of Jackson, highly recommend. It's excellent. It's very, very good. There's a part in that show that they play She's Out of My Life. And wow, I forgot how touching the song is in re-listening to this record. Written by Tom Baller. It's phenomenal. This is such a phenomenal, incredible song. Jackson's performance is next level. The fact that it's just keys and him and that's it. And the way his voice carries this track is outstanding. It's so good. It's so good. I absolutely love this track. And the fact that like at the end of the song, and it might be him just performing, but there's no auto-tune, right? There's no like pitch correction. There's no melodyne. There's no none of that. So Jackson's voice at the end, when he's trying to sing the last note for Life, it wavers because he's getting emotional in the studio. Again, it could be just a performance, but it sounds real and the note fluctuates. He gets flat before he goes back to his note, and it's excellent. The next 2 tracks in I Can't Help It and It's the Falling in Love, to me, are okay songs. I don't necessarily vibe with them too much. They're cool, and in the context of an album by itself, they're good. They're perfectly serviceable. However, the album closer and Burn This Disco Out, I think it's a highlight. It's a really good song. What I like about Burn This Disco Out is the one measure of 2/4. I'm going to get really technical in music theory for a second, so bear with me. But the chorus of the track, when he says, we're going to dance, we're going to burn this disco out, that burn this disco out measure is a measure of 2 as opposed to a measure of 4. So it's like almost an incomplete measure. It's a measure that ends before you expect it to end. But it makes it so that it's something that every time that part of the song comes out, or every time we get to that portion of the song, I look forward to that measure of 2. It's something that like I love when artists do something that's unconventional, not just for the sake of unconventionality, but for the sake of just keeping the listener on their toes, right? And from a lyrical standpoint, it makes sense. He's got enough words to fill just the 2 beats versus the 4. Gonna burn this disco out. That's just 2 beats, right? What that third snap that I just did, the 1 of the next measure. But I think it's very telling that the last song is called Burn This Disco Out on a record that has been proclaimed as Michael's disco record. And it's a great way to end it, really. I mean, you've got a great start in Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, and you've got a great end in During This and Burn This Disco Out. And then you've got a handful of really solid tracks in Rock With You, Working Day and Night, Get on the Floor, Off the Wall, and She's Out of My Life, sandwiched in this 10 track track listing, in this 10 song track listing. And really, you can hear some of the influence that eventually got to Thriller and Bad on this record. You can hear certain things where you're like, I see now as someone who became a fan of Michael, like, again, during Bad and then went backwards to Thriller, you can kind of start seeing like some of the things that made him tick as a songwriter, as a performer. And so those traits that he carried on over to Thriller, that he carried on over to Bad. And Off the Wall, I don't know why it's a record that I avoided for as long as I did. It wasn't on purpose. It was just, the opportunity never really came for me to like turn on Off the Wall and be like, let me listen to this record that Jackson did. Because to me, like, this might be unfair, but it was never going to top Bad and Thriller and Dangerous and all those other records. Like, it was one of those things where, like, I just was like, yeah, it's got some good songs on it, like Don't Stop Till You Get Enough and Rock With You. But, like, I'm pretty sure the rest of the record's, like, serviceable. Probably nothing great. But, and what's funny is I had heard She's Out of My Life before, didn't put two and two together that She's Out of My Life is not on Thriller, right? Like, for me, it was always, like, a Thriller song. And I'm like, it's actually not a Thriller song. It's a Off the Wall song, right? Burn This Disco Out, fun track. To me, the weakest track is probably Girlfriend. And based off of the number of plays that I'm looking at here on YouTube Music, the lowest number of plays out of all the tracks on the record, interestingly, is Burn This Disco Out, It's the Falling in Love, and Girlfriend. Girlfriend and It's the Falling in Love for me are some of the weaker tracks on the record. Burn This Disco Out, I like how it ends. I like how the album ends with Burn This Disco Out. So a little surprised there, but I love to see that Off the Wall has 83 million plays. Rock With You has 631 million plays. And Don't Stop Till You Get Enough has 675 million plays. This is the record that is credited as a significant departure from Michael Jackson's previous work for Motown. And it sold 20 million copies worldwide. It's one of the best-selling albums of all time, certified diamond, and is lauded as one of the greatest albums in popular music. In 2008, the album was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. Produced by Quincy Jones, Michael Jackson, released August 10th, 1979. That was Michael Jackson's Off the Wall. Let me know what your thoughts are about that record. If you're excited about this journey of talking about all of his albums in detail, please consider hitting that subscribe button here on YouTube and also on whatever podcast you listen to podcasts on. I'm excited to be doing this and going down the discography of, inarguably, in my opinion, one of, if not the greatest performers the world has ever seen. My name is Amir, like the kind you look into.